through the forest, things you will see, other places, the future, the past, old friends, long gone. Meteorologists can barely predict what's going to happen with much confidence in the weather next week, but that is not going to stop us from looking into our crystal ball and looking ahead to the Guardians' 5-year plan. What are the Cleveland Guardians going to look like in 2029 on today's Locked On Guardians?
Tanner Bobby the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Make sure you comment below or hit me up on social media to guess what movie our opening quote was from today. Will Tanner Bybee be a Guardian in 2029? We'll talk about that on today's Locked On Guardians. Before we get started on today's Locked On Guardians, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. It is a Wednesday edition of Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Justin Latta. Jeff Ellis is getting the night off. He took Monday's episode. We're kind of splitting things up this week with the holidays. So we're here with you for 3 days this week, and I'm here with you today. And I appreciate you making Locked On Guardians your first listen today, every day, wherever you get podcasts. We're everywhere out there, every podcast app possible. And we're also on YouTube. You can get us on things like Amazon podcasts for music, where you can listen ad-free as well. So we appreciate you being here. If it's your first time here, I am Justin Latta. I have been covering the Guardians farm system since 2007. I've been in a lot of places in Cleveland writing, most notably from Guardians Baseball Insider. I was the editor-in-chief for a couple of years. I've been freelancing for the News Herald and the Morning Journal in Cleveland for a while. I also have my own Substack newsletter. It's called Next Year in Cleveland. Would love if you subscribed. I'm going to be posting a piece on an interview I just did with James Harris, one of the Guardians assistant GMs, who also kind of oversees player development. I talked to him last week. I'm getting ready to publish that tomorrow. So subscribe to see that and don't miss anything else. And you can also catch some of my work over at Prospects Live. So on today's show, like we said, we're going to look at the Guardians' 5-year roster outlook. Who is going to be here in 2029? I like doing this experiment every offseason because I think it's always good to look at. Some places do 4. I like to do 5 because it's just, a 5-year plan. It sounds more official, 5-year plan. I just like looking ahead to see where there are strengths in the farm system, who we can project, who's not going to be here. Gives you just a solid idea of where the farm system is. And look, baseball changes so fast, right? There are so many things that could change developmentally for the better or for worse. Anything could happen. The team could make different decisions. Guys emerge quickly in the draft, especially high schoolers, draft years. We'll talk about some high schoolers today. We're going to talk about draft picks a lot today. We're going to talk about who's going to be here in 2029. We're going to talk about who's going to be gone for sure. We'll talk about some prospects that might emerge. Talk about some prospects that could be trade bait before then. I'm going to give you some draft picks as well to keep an eye on for 2025. And I'm also going to give you one trade of a current Guardians player before the 2029 season as we look at our 5-year outlook. And I think the best place to start when you're talking about the 5-year plan for the Cleveland Guardians, and it all surrounds Jose Ramirez, right? Is Jose Ramirez going to be a Cleveland Guardian in 2029? Will he be somewhere else? Or will he finally starting his clock to Cooperstown? So Jose Ramirez will be a free agent at the end of the 2028 season. So what does that mean for his future? He is going to get paid a pretty nice sum in 2028, $25 million. He will be an unrestricted free agent in 2029. But that's going to place him, I believe, at the age of 36 by then. That's 5 years from now. So he'll be going into his age 37th season going into 2029. So I think it's fair to ask the question where he's going to be. Is he going to be with Cleveland? I don't think Jose Ramirez is ever going to play for another franchise. I think it's going to happen. And Jeff and I, when I told him I was going to come up with this idea for today's show, we kind of talked about it off air about Jose, and I agreed with his sentiment. It was either he's going to be here because the team is good and he's going to want to stay and he's going to want to win, or they're going to be bad and they're going to try to keep him around in his last couple of years as kind of the attraction for a possibly bad team. I don't know what they're going to look like in 5 years competitively. I do have a roster put together. I'm going to talk about at the end of the show or in the next segment even. So I don't know how he fits into that, but I do think in 2029, Jose Ramirez is still here. I think he wants to play. I think he's a gamer. I think he's going to give everything he has. He might not be the same guy he is right now. He won't be the same guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if in 2029 he is still lacing up his cleats for the Guardians. But if he doesn't, that's his first year away from baseball. He just starts his clock to Cooperstown, which he's well on the path for. So I'm going to say Jose Ramirez is here for 2029 for the sake of this. I don't think he'll play anywhere else. Who is not going to be here in 2029? What players are the Guardians not going to have by 2029? So we know for sure who won't be here. We can just kind of look up and down the list. Emmanuel Clase, let's start there. He becomes an unrestricted free agent heading into 2029. I think you can almost guarantee if he's got any mileage left on the arm by 2029, he's gone. They will trade him for sure. Trevor Stephan becomes an unrestricted free agent by then. Don't think you'll see anything related to that. Sam Henches, Nick Sandlin, all off the books there, who will be long gone by then. You can also look at guys like Austin Hedges will be gone by then, obviously. Josh Naylor, we know, might not even be here next year. He definitely won't be here. Probably won't be here in 2 years. I don't see him sticking around that long, even if they do agree to a deal by then. Lane Thomas is a free agent at the end of this year as well. By then, Stephen Kwan will have hit free agency. He is a free agent in the 2028 season. I don't see them reach an extension at this point. He's already going to be 27. I know some people were saying they want to spend money on him. They want to use some of the money this offseason instead of signing a free agent, extending Stephen Kwan. I don't see it happening. I just don't. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. And honestly, there's some things left to prove for Stephen Kwan, right? Like, he had a good first season. He kind of fell off in the second season, was still good, not quite as good. Then he has this great first half in 2024. And then after the first half, he kind of falls apart into just a barely playable player for the most part. He did come back in the playoffs and looked really good down the stretch after the rest at the end of the year. So we'll see. But I don't know how committed they feel to signing him to a long-term extension at his age, unless he's taking a team-friendly deal, which he could, but I don't see it. Tristan McKenzie is a free agent by then. I don't think there's going to be any complications there. We don't even know what it's going to look like for him in 2025. Another guy who is a big part of this is Tanner Bybee. He is going to be a free agent in 2029. Unless the Guardians are ready to pony up and give him the money he deserves, I think Tanner will stay in Cleveland for less than quote-unquote perceived market value if Cleveland can reach the threshold with him where it makes sense for him to take less, but also what he deserves. There's a middle point. There's a middle ground there between fair market value for Tanner Bybee, and I know Jeff talked about some on Monday's show. There's a point where, yes, he can take less to stay than what he get on the open market or what he can do by just, betting on himself and getting to free agency. But there's also a minimum dollar amount Cleveland has to hit in order for him to be willing to take something. And Cleveland's got to pony up. If I had to guess, I think they've got to come in at less. They've got to come in around 60 million, I think, for Tanner, I would say, to stay. And they just haven't shown that kind of commitment. So I'm going to say, for the purposes of this exercise, Tanner Bybee is not going to be a Cleveland Guardian in 2029. In fact, I don't think he'll be a Cleveland Guardian in 2028. I think after 2027, if they don't reach an extension, I wouldn't be surprised if the Guardians try to trade him, just because if that extension's not coming, maybe they'll let it ride out, but they've been here before. Maybe it'll be 2028. I don't know. We'll see. After 2027, that gives him 1 year of control left for somebody else. And there's somebody else I haven't mentioned too that I will wait till the end of the show to mention. And who are we coming up on at the end of that season as well? So some of the guys who are going to be here for sure, that is going to be the last year of control for Andres Gimenez, and this contract is starting to look a little bit iffy for the Guardians right now. And we talked about that earlier, that this contract's just not valuable. We know Tanner's getting to the end there. Cade Smith, 2028 is going to be his last year of club control. I wouldn't be surprised if his arm is still attached, if they wear him into the ground, if they trade him by then. Hunter Gaddis, Andrew Walters. That's a big one right there. Andrew Walters, 2028 would be his last year of club control. heading into 2029. I'm sorry, 2029 would be his last year of club control. That will be a big one because I think he is a future closer. And I think he's the guy they would look to get wrapped up under one of these team-friendly deals if they can do it, because that would give them some out at the end of Emmanuel Clase. Guys like Bo Naylor, Brian Rocchio are all coming up on the end there. Gavin Williams, I know, is on this list as well. He is going to be in his last year of club control by then because he should reach ARB 2 at 2028, so 2029 would be ARB 3. And then Brian Rocchio, also on that list, he would potentially be, if things keep going the way they're going, he would be at ARB 3 in 2029. So you've got guys like Jimenez, you've got Rocchio, who, still not really sure where things go with him. There's guys like Noel and Rodriguez, who we haven't really talked about. There's Manzardo, who is still a piece of this team. But more established guys, like I said, Bo Naylor, that would be his last year if they're still rocking that boat with him. That's going to be the last year of Cade Smith. It's going to be the last year of Andrew Andrew Walters will still be one at club control. He would be an ARB 2 then 2029. So he's not part of that list. He's ARB 2. He would have another year in ARB 3 at 2030, possibly even 2031. So we'll see. You still got guys like that are on the 40, like I said, Gaddis, Heron, they're all there. So those are guys you could expect to be back for 2029. But relievers, those things are volatile. Guys get hurt. We've seen with Sam Henches. Guys get traded. Will they trade one of them? The bullpen is one of those things that happens on the fly, and the Guardians have guys in the system to take over there. We saw emerging core of the bullpen this year, but I think this core will stick around for a little bit. So you'll see some of those guys here. So Walters will still be here by then. Who will be a Cleveland Guardian in 2029? I'm going to take a look at my possible roster for 2029. Really just going to be looking at prospects who are in the system. That never works out this way, but this is just an exercise to look at kind of the system depth. But I'm also going to talk about some prospects that could be traded. I'm going to talk about some draft picks to watch that could emerge by 2029 on this list. And again, I'm also going to give you a trade that I think is going to happen before the 2029 season from a current Cleveland Guardians roster member coming up. Get ready to tackle some NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook, that is FanDuel, because right now, new customers, you can get $5 and you can get $100 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in just one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you place your bets. A lot of NFL action going on Thanksgiving, right? We've got Bears-Lions. I'm telling you, I'm not really much of an NFL bettor, but the Bears stink and the Lions are really good. So, I think easy money there on the Lions. Cowboys and the Giants, God, those two teams are just terrible. I can't believe they're forcing us to watch that game on Thanksgiving. I will not be watching that game. It's going to be abominable. And you got the Bears you got the Packers, and I can't remember who they're playing in the night game, but it's not a great game. And then you get Chiefs Raiders. The Raiders are terrible, but maybe FanDuel makes it a little more palatable as you're sitting there gobbling down some turkey and you want to win $150 and you haven't been on FanDuel yet. Bet $5 on that Lions-Bears game. I think the Lions are going to crush them. And if you're the first-time bettor and you put $5 down and you win, you get $150 in bonus bets from FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Appreciate you guys making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day wherever you get podcasts. If you're an everydayer, I know Moving Average, we got you doing a lot of comments. You said that was one of your YouTube's music, said it was one of your most listened to podcasts of the year already. If you guys get, I don't know when these start, but you get the Spotify Wrapped and everything else. They do those things, podcast listen. If you guys, if they do the Wrapped and they show your podcast numbers for the year and we're on there, let us know. We'd love to shout you out. We appreciate that kind of support. I just want to let you know, scheduling wise, obviously won't be with you on Thursday. We're not recording on Wednesday night. So take that time with your families. Talk about this episode with your family. Share it with them. Tell them you listened, and here's some guys you should know. Sound smart, maybe smart at the dinner table on Thanksgiving. Don't talk about any, controversial subjects. Talk about whether or not Travis Bazzana is going to be a second baseman or an outfielder in 2029. That's a more fun conversation you can have on Thanksgiving. So talk about this episode or go back and listen to an old one. We've got lots of good old ones we've talked about. one of our interviews with Cooper Ingle, you can go back and listen to, because I think Cooper Ingle is going to be a future Cleveland Guardian. He is on my 2029 roster. So I'm looking here. I think by 2029, the Guardians are, I don't know if I believe in the Bo Naylor experiment at this point. I just don't know. Is he going to hit enough? Is the defense going to be enough to outweigh I can't believe, again, this is why I say prospects change so much. 3 years ago, we were talking about, or 2 years ago, we were talking about Bo Naylor being a hit over glove catcher. And would he be able to stick behind the plate with his bat and move to another position? Now we're talking about him being a glove over bat catcher. And I don't know how the experiment's going to work out. And I said he's going into his final season of club control in 2029. Yeah, ARB2. Yeah, it would be an ARB3 in 29. So I think one way or another, Bo Naylor is not the Guardian starting catcher in 2029. I gave it to Cooper Ingle. I debated Ingle and Cozart, and I have issues with Cooper Ingle's throwing arm. I don't know if he's got enough arm strength. And by 2029, we should have robo-umps. So maybe he can improve it by then. We should have an ABS, the automatic ball strike challenge system at the very least by then. So he's got good framing metrics. I don't know if framing is going to matter a ton by 2029. Throwing runners out will be very important in 2029, I think. And Jacob Cozart for sure has the better arm defensively, but I don't know if he's going to make enough contact to be a starting catcher in the big league. So for right now, I'm going Cooper Ingle. I think everything else he does well defensively. I think if he doesn't have to worry about framing as much, if the automatic ball strike comes into fruition, he can focus on, his transfers and his throwing arm. Maybe he gets better there. Over at first base, I've got Ralphie Velasquez. I want to believe in this one really hard because the bat is very special. I contemplated maybe making him an outfielder. I don't know. He did play some there with Lake County in 20 and a little bit Lynchburg in 2024. I think he can do it. I also wouldn't rule out a return to catching for him. I'm publishing that piece that I did with James Harris, as we speak, as you're probably listening to this, and they're not ruling out him still having a shot at catcher. So, keep an eye on that, but I want to believe in the bat at first base. So I put him there. I've got Angel Hanau at second base in 2029. I think he's a guy who could be traded because by the time he actually is ready to force his way to the big leagues, they might already have solutions, right? We've already got Travis Bazzana, we've got Andres Jimenez. We know that contract they're stuck with him, and that's his last year. And they're not going to get off that contract, as far as I know, unless they trade his contract before then, if it's so bad, and try to take on another bad contract in return. But let's assume that they're trying to get the most value out of that Andres Jimenez contract. I think they'll slide him over to shortstop. I would put him now at second. I think he's better at second than short. I think Jimenez is better at shortstop. Maybe he's not at age 32. Maybe he will be. He's such a skilled defender, so maybe he will be. And again, I think they want to soak up every last bit of that contract value. I think Hanau can force his way up before then. Like 2029, we're talking, he's going to be in AA in 2025. He should be in AAA in 2026. Maybe he's already established himself by 2029. I think he has the bat to do it. I believe in the bat. I believe that he also could be traded before then. So we'll see. I did put Jose Ramirez back at third base for them. I do think, like I said, I don't think he's going anywhere else unless he just decides after 2028 at age 36, he's not doing it anymore. I don't think he goes anywhere else. In the outfield, this would be the most exciting Guardians outfield of all time, if this pans out. And it never pans out this way because Chase DeLauder needs bionic feet to stay healthy. But I've got him penciled into right field in 2029 because he's their best bet in the outfield. And then I've got Travis Bazzana flanking him in left field, moving him to left field in 2029 because that infield I just talked about last year of Andres Jimenez on the team. I think they're stuck with that contract. If Angel Hanau is not traded before then, I think he can make it. And maybe Bazzana is the second baseman before then. Maybe Hanau forces him to the outfield where I do think Bazzana is better long-term. I'm going to say right now, I think Bazzana's best bet in the major leagues is left field or center. Maybe it's center. I don't know. But I've got Jason Churio in center, and I think he's another guy who could be traded before then. But this would be the most hyped outfield I've seen from a Guardians farm system in a long time if you have Bazzana in left, Churio in center, and DeLauder in right. This goes back to I don't even know. I mean, you never really had a chance to see Grady and Brantley in the same outfield, or Chu. That would have been a great outfield. This would be a great outfield to me too. And I think that's where their best bet is for the outfield internally. It never works out like this. And then I got Kyle Manzardo at DH. I know at some point he might take over first base, but Rafi Velasquez is a pretty athletic dude. Like I said, I watched him play the outfield. He made some nice catches out there. I think he can handle first base. Manzardo might be able to too, so maybe there's some back and forth here. But Manzardo should still be a part of this team in 2029. He is, he is under contract. He'll be ARB 1 in 2028, ARB 2 in 2029. So he'll have 2 years of club control left. I would think that he'll still be part of the team then. I think that makes the most sense for him. I've got Cody Huff on the bench as a backup catcher. Surprisingly, David Fry, still under contract by then. They love his versatility. Guys who just are lefty mashers age fairly well, and he doesn't have to play catcher every day. I wouldn't be surprised if they stick with him, but we'll see. He's a little bit older, but that's always a valuable role in a roster. And as he's a platoon player, kind of, he's not going to get very expensive. Maybe there's a small extension we worked out there to keep him cheaper, but that's a guy I don't think is going to cost you a bunch in ARB. He has a very defined role. You know what he can do. He does hit lefties well. I think that's a valuable thing. You can stick with him to the duration of his club control, even though he is a little bit older. But I think that skill set age is okay. Juan Brito is a guy who could be in the mix there as a utility guy. He could be up next year. He could also be traded. This is a guy who could also be traded in the offseason, especially this offseason. But he's a guy who fits to me at utility. Cleveland doesn't know where his future is going to come from. I don't know if I believe in him enough defensively to start anywhere, but I believe enough in the bat to move him around. And then here's two guys you should watch out for. Luis Morejo. We've talked about him on the show. If you're an everydayer, we've talked about Luis Morejo a couple of times late in the regular season. We talked about him because he has some good contact rates. There is some swing and miss in the game there, but he's got some very thunderous bat speed and exit velocities for his age, for a guy who doesn't swing and miss or chase a lot. That's an interesting development for Cleveland. So keep an eye on Morejo. He's played some third. He's played some outfield. He might play first. Don't know where the position is. The bat might be the best thing. And then I've also got Ryan Cesarini penciled in here as utility outfield. This is a guy that kind of drew some attention later. He was the Guardians pick. He was a draft pick last year in the 2024 draft. Only played at Lynchburg, but got some eyeballs on him. People were interested. And I think he could play all three outfield spots. He makes a lot of contact. This is a guy who could be a nice bench outfielder for the future. I need to talk about the Guardians pitching staff for 2029, and then we're going to get into some more trade candidates. We're going to get into some draft picks to watch, and I'm going to give you a trade prediction for one of the Guardians on the current roster, all coming up on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. All right, let's get into the pitching staff here real quickly because I got to move on to some other stuff. The pitching, this is the hardest one to nail down because guys get hurt, guys get traded, guys don't break out. They go to the bullpen, failed starters. Pitching is the hardest one to try to dig out here, right? But I'm going to go number one. I'm going to go with Braylon Doughty. I had a very hard time looking in this organization. This is why I think they need to extend Tanner Bybee. And I'm not saying Tanner Bybee's an ace, but I'm saying he is your most sure bet in the organization right now for the next couple of years. Health-wise, stuff-wise, character, work ethic, that's a guy you should bet on. But I don't believe they will. I think they should, but I don't believe they will. So I'm penciling Braylon Doughty in because I think he is the most safe. There's no such thing as a safe high school pitching prospect, okay? But he is the safest bet from this crop of high school pitchers. I think 5 years from now, he's a guy who could be in the major leagues. And I don't know if he's going to be an ace. But when I looked at who I could put in the major league pitching staff, he was the guy I thought was most likely to have the qualities closest to it because he has multiple good pitches. He throws strikes. Number two, I've got Austin Peterson. I don't know if Peterson's a traditional 2. I think it's more likely he's a 3. And again, this is where we have concerns about the future of this pitching factory is they are lacking some guys in the pipeline, but a lot can happen between now and 2029, which is why we're doing this. A lot could change. So Peterson to me fits more as a 3 or 4, but I really like the stuff. He's not afraid to attack hitters. I think that makes him a nice middle rotation guy. He might be a little bit light as a 2. I'm leaving Joey Cantillo in at 3. I don't know if I really believe in this, but again, this just shows right now I don't see a path for a lot of guys at this moment. Things could change. And I played around with the rotation with some different high school guys, but I was like, okay, there's no way all these high school guys are going to pan out. Odds just say they don't. Guys get hurt, and high school pitchers are the riskiest demographic besides high school catchers. But I've got Parker Messick penciled in at 4. I think he's a very solid 4 guy. Probably better as a 5, but again, given this experiment, here's a bit of a surprise. Aiden Major. A lot of good metrics on Aiden Major at West Virginia. Despite the size, was kind of a bulldog in college. Has a really a lot of good fastball metrics. I think there's good extension here. He's got some of the delivery qualities Cleveland loves, which is why they drafted him. I'm going to watch out for Aiden Major as potential sleeper in the rotation. Maybe he's a future reliever. He is undersized, but I think he's an interesting guy. He's got a deep pitch mix, and I really like the metrics on the fastball to play as a starter at the back end. So that's kind of an out of the ballpark, out of left field pick there. In the bullpen, I've got Andrew Walters closing by then because I said Emmanuel Clase is gone by then. I got Franco Alemán. I put Daniel Espino in the bullpen. Again, this is just throwing up a prayer and hoping he stays healthy. But I've got Daniel Espino in the pen. Tim Herron should still stick around. And then the last 4 guys in the pen, names you want to listen for, is Rafe Schlesinger, who I think is a future Josh Hader type reliever, possibly. Maybe not as good, but kind of that ilk. Maybe he's more, I don't know if he's an Andrew Miller, maybe not, but he should be pretty good as a reliever. Maybe Cleveland's going to try him as a starter, but I think he's more likely a reliever. I threw Chase Mobley and Joey Oki both in the bullpen. I think Oki is more likely. Mobley, I don't have as much faith in, but I threw him in the bullpen here. I think Oki is more likely to make it to the majors out of the 2 of them, but I wouldn't bet against Chase Mobley either. And then my last bullpen guy, I have Dylan DeLucia. I think he's probably a reliever. The fastball might tick up more, but he's still a starter right now, but I like what he could do in the bullpen. I would watch to see what he does next year when he's 2 years removed from Tommy John. He'll be probably in high A to start the year and could get double A. All right, so that's our 2029 roster for the Guardians. Let's take a look real quickly at some trade candidates. I mentioned Angel Hanau. I think he's a guy who could be traded this offseason. I talked about Juan Brito as a guy who could be traded this offseason as well. 2 other guys I think about from the future who are trade candidates because they weren't on my list and because I think they just fit here. I think CJ Kayfus is trade bait. I think if you can get anything for him, he really improved his lower half, his swing this year to tap into more power. If you can convince somebody he is a future first baseman at the big league level who can play a little bit of left field, maybe he's a valuable piece for something. I don't know what. And it might not be this offseason. It could be next offseason too. Or it could be the trade deadline next year for something Cleveland needs. But I think Kayfus and I think Welbin Francisca. If I'm Cleveland, I'm trading Welbin Francisca no matter what. I think there are better infielders in the system than Welbin Francisca, and we've just seen this story too many times where the value is a little bit higher early on, and then as he goes on, the hit tool just doesn't materialize. There's not a lot of power. There's not a lot of carrying tools, and you just fail to capitalize on the peak value. And I don't think Welbin Francisco is at his peak value. I expect to see him in Lake County next year partially. But I think he's a guy I would trade sooner rather than later because I think the peak value is much sooner. And the more you let him go up, like Brian Rocchio's value peaked a while ago. Probably, I'm sure they wanted to trade him. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But again, I just wonder if there's enough carrying tools there for Welbin, and I'd rather do that before long with him. All right, here's some draft picks I would be interested in. These are some guys that maybe could impact the Guardians roster by 2029. Again, it's 5 years from now. If it's a high school guy, it's less likely. But I will say this. I do think right now my gut says that Cleveland's going to pick a high school player where they're picking. Right now they're projected to pick 28th. When they pick that low, they are generally going after high school talent. They did Gavin Williams the 1 year, so maybe that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to be for sure high school, but I see being that low in the class, like, they did this with Will Benson and Nolan Jones, Carson Tucker, Ralphie Velasquez. I just think picking this low, they're going to go high school. I just do. But here are some guys worth watching for the draft that could be impact players by 2029. We've talked about Ethan Petrie, big power from South Carolina, some swing and miss issues, but a big kid. I think Merrick Houston's a guy to keep an eye on over at Wake Forest. He can play shortstop. He was their leadoff hitter a year ago. Really emerged on that team with Nick Kurtz and Seaver King. All those guys really broke out. Cade Fisher is a college arm I really like. He's a Florida kid. They've taken Florida kids before. Hasn't always worked out, but this is a guy who went to the Cape this past summer. He only threw 3 games, but he struck out 6, walked 2. If the control gets better going into his last year at Florida, he's an interesting left-handed arm I like out of Florida. Also on this list, I've got Cameron Appenzeller, high school left-hander. Angel Cervantes, we've talked about before, really good changeup. Eli Willits is a high school kid I really like. I think he's a guy who, I'm not going to say he can move fast, but he's a very projectable kid. He's reclassified. He's younger for the class. Switch hitter. He's got MLB bloodlines. MLB coach Reggie Willits is his dad. He's an Oklahoma commit, so I don't think he'll be too bad, but he's up the middle guy. And then the other guy I've also got here, I've got Lucas Franco, who's, again, also a shortstop. Shocking, right? Cleveland shortstops. We've never seen that before. He's a TCU commit. Some people think he'll move to third base because he's a bit of a bigger kid, but he's a left-handed shortstop. Those guys are always valuable, so I wouldn't be shocked if he's also moving up this coming year in the spring. He might be a guy who moves up, and he's got a guy with power projections and supposedly makes very good swing decisions. And then the guy I think I like the most right now in high school, I just did some reading tonight, is a Stanford commit. It's Brock Sell, who is an outfielder. Again, he's a Stanford commit. He's from Stockton, California. Cleveland loves scouting on that side of the country. 6'1". He's a left-handed hitter, right-handed thrower in the outfield. He also plays the middle infield. He's also a pitcher. Again, another guy with very good swing decisions here, good bat speed. We're talking a lot of contact here with this guy as well. Brock Sell, I think right now is one of my favorites, high school bats in the class. We'll see though. These are some guys I just think he can move around defensively a little bit, but he is a guy who's got a contact over power profile, and people really like his swing, and Cleveland loves that side of the coast, and he's a little projectable. So keep an eye on that one as well. And then let's do a trade prediction here before we get out of here. So I told you I had one trade from the current Guardians roster that I'm predicting after the 2028 season, because we know there is no chance that the Guardians, if he plays well, if he pans out, God only knows, because things didn't go well for him in 2024. Who knows what it's going to look like several years from now, right? I think the Guardians will trade if things all go well for Gavin Williams. I think Gavin Williams goes to the Dodgers for shortstop Emo Morales, who, again, these are all extremely young kids, but he's got some loose Fernando Tatis comps. Jesus Alero, who's a complex pitcher right now, 6'2", big kid, big arm. And then infielder, maybe infielder Dylan Campbell, who was part of their draft class 2 years ago. Saw him in Great Lakes last year. He's, I believe, 21 right now. So he'll be a little bit older by 2029. He'll be 25, but probably a third piece in this kind of deal. But I think this is a really interesting possibility to trade him. I think we know Gavin Williams is going to be traded. He's Scott Boras client. So I really don't see how he makes it to 2029 unless he just keeps getting injured. I also looked at some free agents, by the way, going into that season as well. I'll share. I didn't put it on my graphics here, but some notable free agents that could be available in 2028, hitting the 2029. Lars Nootbaar, everyone's favorite everyone wants to trade for him, right? He's a free agent heading in the 2029 season. So we'll see about that. Sandy Alcantara will be a free agent by then. Everybody's trying to acquire him. Who knows if his arm's put together. Brent Rooker, another Cleveland favorite. He will be a free agent by then, but I think he's going to be 35. But he might be a right-handed DH that, might pair well for them by then. Who knows? Brendan Donovan, who Jeff and I keep trying to acquire in trades, will be a free agent by then. He's a utility guy. I don't really know how things are going to look for him by then, but he'll be a free agent. And I've always been a fan, but maybe that's not a profile that ages all that well. And then Justin Steele, he'll be a 34-year-old left-handed starting pitcher by then. Could be someone Cleveland's interested in by then. Shouldn't at that age, may not get a great deal from anybody, but someone I've always been interested in personally. And then the last one was Bailey Ober, who would also be an older starting pitcher who might be available that offseason as well. So that has been kind of our run through of the 2029 Cleveland Guardians. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think is going to be around in 2029. Who are some extension candidates I missed? Who are some trade candidates I missed? Who are some prospects in the system you like that I didn't talk about? Who are some trades that you might consider that I didn't talk about? Or maybe even some free agents. Maybe you're looking ahead. I look on Spotrac for that. So Jeff and I will be off the rest of this week, Thursday and Friday. We hope you have a great Thanksgiving with your family. Like I said, go back and listen to some old episodes. Talk about this one at dinner with your family. If you'd like to talk about some prospects that I mentioned and some draft guys. We'll be back Monday with Monday morning headlines. There's nothing really to talk about Guardians-wise. We'll probably do a position review, so let us know who you want to hear about next. We've done bullpen and catcher so far, or no, bullpen and shortstop. We'll do top 10 Tuesday. We'll do what if Wednesday next week. We'll have trade talk Thursday. And then next Friday, we're going to have the winter meetings preview. That's right. We were back next week, 5 days before the winter meetings will happen the following Monday. So we'll get a preview by then. Hope you guys all have a safe and happy Thanksgiving with your family. We appreciate you making Locked On Guardians part of your routine and honestly being part of your family. Jeff and I love doing this, but we don't do it just for the heck of it, right? We do it because it's your show and we want you to enjoy it. And we appreciate you guys making us part of your routine and being here with us every step of the way. It's not just our show. Like I said, it's your show and we appreciate that. Hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Leave some comments. We sure could use a review. Haven't had one in a while, but thank you all for listening. Have a great holiday and we'll be back with you on Monday morning. Until then, go Guardians, go.